Today we are learning how to glass etch. Hi and welcome back to my craft room. My name is Kelsey. I also call myself Dinosaur Mama, and today we are going to go through glass etching. I'm excited about this video because I'm going to show you when I did it the first time compared to the second time and the things that I learned in how to use glass etching cream. If you are new to my craft room, check out the description below where I will have a link to my blog where I have over 800 free SVG files. Today I did use an SVG file from Creative Fabrica and I will have that linked below as well. So if you're ready, let's get started in glass etching. So the first thing that I did was wipe down my glass. I forgot to film that. And then I cut out my stencil, and I actually used stencil vinyl that I had. This is Cricut brand, which I don't love Cricut brand, but this worked just fine. And I feel like this is the first time I'm doing the etching. So I'm gonna go through this one a little bit quicker because I did make some mistakes here, but that's how we learn. So, notice here that I'm pulling up the A, and I don't think I cut my stencil deep enough. So I think that was part of the problem. And you don't want to have any of these loose pieces. You want a really, really smooth decal. So your stencil needs to be perfect. And I mean that in all ways, like no bubbles, no cuts, no rips. When you're working with this cream, you don't want it to seep into anywhere because once it's on there, it's permanent. So the other thing that I would say is if you're trying to do something etched really small, just be very careful when weeding so that you're not causing any air pockets and you're not causing any tears in your file, or in your stencil. You can also use permanent vinyl, which I have not tried, but someone said that it works really well and that you can get it off. And then also you can use removable vinyl. I couldn't think of the word. So you definitely have other options other than stencil vinyl. So here I transferred over my stencil, and this again is my first try. So I'm going to show you the way that I did it where it was like perfect in the next try. But this one, I was not focused on like getting out any air bubbles. I looked at it kind of like quickly and I was like, okay, looks good. And I should have taken more time to make sure this was really sealed down. And when I did it finally and got it to work, I did use my heat gun to make sure this was nice and sealed down. Now, when using etching cream, you definitely want to wear gloves. On the bottle, it says you could have burns from it. So please try to wear some sort of protective gear. I think you might even want to wear goggles. I did not, which I know is terrible, but I didn't. So now I'm going to put on the Armour Etch, and Armour Etch is reusable. So my next thing that I learned was I should have made my stencil either larger where it had more of an edge, or use the painter's tape that's literally off to the corner. You can see it on the side of my screen, and covered up my glass more. This will make sure that if it starts to run, it doesn't run onto your glass, and then you have it etched where you don't want it etched. So that is something else that I learned. You'll also see that I'm using a paint spatula rather than a paintbrush. You can use either. I just felt like the paint spatula was a little bit better to get it on thick. So I'm just putting on the etching cream, and make sure you're checking. I looked on the inside of the glass to make sure that everything was covered. You want this to be a nice thick layer. So this was my first go. I'm going to just go ahead and skip forward to show you the results. And then let's jump over into when I actually did everything correct. So here I am. I already wiped it down. I ran it under some water and I'm peeling off the stencil vinyl. And I knew right away that this was like such a fail on my part. I did let the cream sit for 3 minutes. Someone has told me that you can let it sit for up to like 10 to 15 minutes for really like dark etching. So I only did the 3 minutes. That's what is recommended on the bottle. I did scrape my extra back into the original bottle, and that's when I started to look at my glass. And when it dries, it does become a little bit thicker, or I guess better seen. But I definitely had some places on here where it was just kind of like smeared and not perfect. And I definitely needed another round of etching and trying. So you can kind of see on the A that the middle of the A went missing. So when I was putting on the cream, it must have shifted off. And so it just was not a perfect go. So here I am the next day with my my same etch glass. I'm going to do it on the back. But you'll see now I made my stencil more in the middle of my stencil vinyl so that I had room on top, on both sides, and at the bottom. Now you don't have to do this. You can make it the same way that I made it yesterday or in the earlier part of this video, and you can just use painter's tape to cover up the edges. That will work just fine as well, but I just put my stencil in the middle so that I had more of an edge. Either way will work. So I'm going to transfer it over, and please, again, your stencil is honestly like the most important part of this. You need the stencil to be perfect if you want the etching to be perfect. So really, it doesn't matter about how like you apply I guess it does matter how you apply the etching cream because you do want it thick, but really, if you go on with a bad stencil, it doesn't matter how long you left your etching cream on or how thick it was. It's not going to look right because your stencil wasn't correct. So your main goal is to have a good stencil placed on. So I'm going to go ahead and place this on and make sure that it's on really, really well. So what I did was I grabbed my heat gun, and you can get one of these on Amazon. I will link all of the materials and tools down below, and I'm going to use it on the lowest setting, and I'm basically just using this to try to get out any air bubbles that might be in the stencil. And you know, there might be air bubbles off on the side of the stencil, but you want to make sure there's no pockets where there is any space. So like by my M, I had this little pocket where etching cream might be able to seep down into it. You want to make sure there are no pockets anywhere. You want to make sure all of your pieces are on there and that everything is sealed down really nicely, and having this little shot of heat onto it will make sure that it's sealed down really well. So you can also use a hair dryer for this. Just make sure you are sealing down and making sure there's no air pockets, no movable vinyl, no problems before you put your etching cream on to your stencil. And here I am again putting my etching cream on to my glass. And this is a Dollar Tree mug, and it worked just fine. I did do a test before I decided to do the whole glass because I wasn't sure if like maybe it was like, I don't know, crappy glass. So I was like, I'm going to make sure it works. And so I did. So this was only a $1 mug that I used to test out this etching cream. And if you're new at it like I am, I think that using something that's a little bit cheaper is a great way to start and practice. So you see that I'm putting it on very, very thick and making sure that I'm covering everything. You don't want to miss any of your spots because you can't really go back and like fix this. Like it's kind of like a one-shot deal. So you want to make sure everything's covered really well. And you see I have extra space now with that stencil. And again, painter's tape will also work. If you are doing something on like a casserole dish or a cake pan, not a cake pan, a cake stand, I guess a cake pan too. You want to do this on the outside, so you don't want to do it on the inside of the pan. You want to make sure that you can still put your food inside. So you're going to want to do it on the outside, and you're going to want to mirror your image, just as a heads up if you're doing that. So now I'm going to let this sit again for 3 minutes. You can let it sit longer, but I'm going to let it sit for the 3 minutes, and then I'm going to use my scraper, which I will show you, and scrape off the excess before I go and rinse it in my sink with some room temperature water. So 3 minutes. And here I am using my spatula to scrape up as much as I can, as gently as I can. I'm also trying to avoid getting it on my glass cutting mat that's below this. And as I was making it the first time, I was like, oh God, if I mess this up and it's on there, I'm going to have etching on it, which isn't the end of the world, right? But it's just funny. So I'm going to scrape this up. And then I am going to go and rinse this in my sink. Make sure when you're rinsing in your sink, you're also thinking about not getting it on your porcelain sink. Make sure you rinse it down really well. I did Google if it messes up your pipes, and it says it does not. So just make sure you're running water and that you're not leaving any of the residue in your sink. So after you have it scraped back into the bottle, because I do find this to be an expensive product, it was $14 for this tiny little bottle, we can go ahead and rinse. So I dried this off with a little bit of a paper towel, and then I went ahead and I started peeling off all of that stencil vinyl. And remember, etching is permanent, so you really can't like damage it once it's on there. But I'm just using my nails to kind of scrape it off here. And then I'm going to dry it with my heat gun so that you can see my final result. So overall, what I learned with this project is to just keep trying, make sure your stencil is flat, practice on something that's not super expensive, and know you can reuse the etching cream so you don't feel like you're wasting anything. But I really was happy with my second result. There's like 2 little things in the leaves that I probably messed up when I was weeding, to be honest, and nothing to do with it seeping under. It was more of a weeding problem. But overall, I absolutely love the way that it came out, and I think this is such a fun and cool technique to learn. Thank you for joining me today as we did some glass etching. I love sharing these videos with you, showing you my mistakes and my victories. If you like this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. It helps me so much. Subscribe to my YouTube channel for new crafty videos every week, and share this with one of your friends who have been wanting to try glass etching. I will see you soon in my craft room, and stay crafty.